Good afternoon. We are about to start the session in the plenary room. If you could please take a seat, we are about to start this session. Thank you. Good afternoon. Please welcome to the stage the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology of the United Kingdom, Michelle Donnellan.
Thank you. And before we move on to our closing plenary session, I would like to take this opportunity for us to reflect a little bit on the strides that we've made so far and delve into the top lines that were coming out of our roundtable. So can I invite onto the stage, please, those chairs of this morning's sessions?
Take this one. I'll take this one.
Okay. Okay, we're just going to have a few seconds, I'm hoping, from everybody, just giving us the top information from each of the sessions. And I'm going to start with Minister Champagne.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. What a pleasure to see you all. Thank you very much. And can we give you a big round of applause for an amazing summit? Let's start with that. I think that everyone, you deserve to be thanked for your leadership and everything assembled. I say it's the right people at the right time. Listen, our session was really about the global AI risk. And I would say there's 3 A's. For me, acknowledgement. I think there's a broad acknowledgement that AI could be empowering malicious actors around the world. We talk about biological weapons, chemical weapons, but also disinformation, which is very, very, I read in the material. Some of you may have had the same material, but there'll be apparently something like 50 elections in 2024 that will affect 4 billion people. And if you think about deep fakes and all that, I think there is a general consensus among at least our group that these risks are real, and the technology will be enabling and could be enabling people. And it's all about scale, scope, and speed. And we should all be acknowledging that. Now, once you have acknowledged the issue, I think we move into action. That's the other A. I think there's a broad consensus that we need to take action, both domestically and internationally. A number of people have said that we should have an IPC panel on AI safety. Obviously, what the UK and the US are talking about, making sure that we can test these systems independently. This was all welcome. There was a lot of discussion around that. And certainly, some analogy were made with the nuclear field, that it's incumbent upon the manufacturer, in this case, the developer, to make sure that their systems are intrinsically safe before they're put into action or into the market. So there was a number of very, very interesting discussion on that. And finally, colleagues understood that we need to converge because we can take action domestically with voluntary code of conducts or national legislation. But at the end of the day, no one can insulate himself from the risk. So we need to have global governance. And there was discussion around GPA, around United Nations, and other body who can do that for us. And finally, I think we need to adapt. That's the other A, because clearly everyone understood that it's very difficult to forecast or foreshadow what AI could do over the next 5-10 years exponentially. And therefore making sure that our regulation would be adapting. And I would say this is very much the start of a discussion that you've done, Madam Secretary. I would say let's seize the moment, let's be ambitious, and let's give confidence to people. Because if we want to, in order to maximize or to realize the benefits of AI, we need to obviously deal with managing the risk. And once we have managed the risk, we can obviously realize the opportunities. And the way to do that for me is obviously having these guardrails that will build trust. I think we need to build trust with people. So let's seize the moment, let's be ambitious, and let's give confidence to people that we get it and we're going to act in the interest of humanity. Merci tout le monde. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And our session dealt with the question of loss of control, humans losing control over AI models. And it was a very rich discussion. There were very divergent views, but I think we could discern 3 themes at least. The first is that if we look at current AI systems today, they do not yet pose a real risk of loss of control. They require human prompting and generally fail when asked to plan over time towards a goal. And current models also have limited ability to take actions in the real world. However, it appeared quite clear that future models are likely to improve on all of these dimensions, even if the case has not been fully made that we will one day still experience a severe loss of control over AI models. Having said that, in the nearer term, it is more likely for humans to give systems disproportionate control than it is for systems to take that control from us. So I would say that this is the first set of themes that emerged. The second is that there was an interesting idea of what if we could continue to enjoy the benefits of current AI models, but press the pause button on the development of frontier AI models in order that we could buy ourselves time and develop the capability to exercise proper control over these advanced frontier models. This sounds good in theory. The difficulty lies with the fact that you can have responsible developers that are willing to comply with such a rule, But what levers do we actually have to ensure that the bad actors don't go ahead to develop frontier models anyway without our knowledge? And what could we in fact do to stop this from happening? So the question of levers and incentives is something that we have to address too. Be that as it may, even as we try to investigate these questions more fully and in order to satisfy ourselves that we have the right answers, it's important for us to focus on actionable items. And there were also three that we agreed would be no-brainers, that they are no regrets move. The first is that we should grow global expertise in AI safety and R&D. And the second is in terms of deepening collaborations in AI testing and auditing. And also then thirdly, we should continue multitask, multi-stakeholder exchanges in order to arrive at better understanding of the issues and how we can mitigate against the risk. So I would say that on that note, we had a really interesting discussion. And I also like to echo Minister Champagne's thanks to our colleagues from the United Kingdom for organizing the AI Safety Summit and for assembling this really excellent group of colleagues for us to make progress together. Thank you very much.
So actually, when Theo talk about the past giant AI experiment, this morning me and Max Chapman was talking about are we successful for the past giant AI models letter. Actually, what do we mean by successful? Actually, now we're having more than 20 countries talking together about AI safety. This is already a huge success along that line because the aim of the letter is to raise the concern on AI safety. So for that, we should thank all together to UK. Thank you so much. Having more than 20 countries all together to talk about it. For the unexpected advances in our roundtable, I would like to say it's not only about unexpected advances, it's also about unexpected failures that we have to face. This is the core, I would say, for the effort on AI safety, that can we really make a good prediction? The answer would be no. But can we stop trying? The answer would be also no. So I think this is the importance and beauty of the discussion. So we've been also talking about the importance or possible failures because of open source for AI safety. This is a really challenging topic because in my generation, when we were starting working on computer science, we were getting so much benefit from Linux, BSD, and now when we're working on large-scale AI models, we have to think about whether open source, the paradigm for open source can continue because that it raises so much concerns and risks when larger-scale models with very large uncertainties open to everyone, and how can we just ensure that it was not really misused and abused. The challenge is not only for AI scientists, it's really for the whole world. How can we make a balance, or can we make a balance? The final point that I would like to make here to represent my group is really about the domestic and international collaborations. For this morning, we've heard that both the UK and also the US will have its version of AI Safety Institute. Actually, we think that we should all have something like an AI Safety Institute for our own country, but that's not enough. We need to have an AI safety network working really together just to hold the hope that maybe we can, solve some of the unpredicted advances and unpredicted failures. By the release of the UN Advisory Board on AI, when I was talking to our dearest Amandeep, Amandeep was saying is that the future of AI, especially on the occasion of UN, is not really about the advanced countries like China and the US and how can you compete or share the benefit. It's really about the rest of the world when we are having opportunities to develop and to get our benefits. What about the rest of the world? Will the superpowers in AI bring fundamental challenges to the rest of the world? I think that's really why we have to hold hands together, not only by the efforts from UNESCO, ITU, but really on the UN platform, and also for these efforts like the Global AI Safety Summit that currently hold 20 countries together. I would hope maybe for the next years or two, you can hold like 40 countries. Thank you.
Well said.
Well, just to illustrate how successful the summit has been, people in our working group that focused on the societal risks of the deployment of frontier AI models, participants stayed for an extra 15 minutes so that everybody who wanted to speak could actually speak. And I thought that was very, very kind and showed the commitment to listening and engaging. If there's one thing you remember from what our group wanted to present, it is that known societal risks of the deployment of frontier AI models are existential to democracy, to human rights, to civil rights, to fairness, inequality. Think about economic inequality, access to healthcare and other kinds of services, but also in a global context, the inequality between those who already have access and those who don't. But then we also talked about how we can better use the laws that already exist or the best practices that we can benefit from. So, for example, to ensure that there is clarification of how existing rules apply, for example, privacy in the context of AI, intellectual property rights, but also liability was discussed. And also, besides laws, how we might learn from the field of trust and safety of best practices in terms of making AI deployment in our society today much more safe and fair. Then another recommendation is to have more comprehensive and better quality technical evaluations. The notion of evaluation is easily shared, but what do we really mean? Can we include more concrete and societal metrics and be contextual to the applications in the real world to make sure that the evaluations are continuous as the life cycles of these AI products evolve? That includes investing in basic research to understand better how systems work, but also to inquire how governments' own uses of systems work so that the government can be a better leader in the use of artificial intelligence. And we discussed how public procurement is an opportunity for governments to set guidelines by doing, and we also saw that coming back in the executive order, for example. Now, the two last points, also important, talked a lot about risk, but not to miss out on the opportunities that AI can offer to solve major problems, to actually strengthen democracy. So we talked about risk to democracy, but also opportunities for AI to strengthen it, digest large volumes of information, for example, to overcome the climate crisis, and to address societal bias, not to contribute to it. And lastly, there were a lot of participants who wanted to emphasize how important it is to include citizens. Young people were mentioned, but really to recommend governments that when they put together an AI advisory body, for example, that maybe they also include a random sample of citizens. Not just experts, not just multidisciplinary experts, but people who will be living through the consequences of policies made. And so a recognition of how important the multi-stakeholder engagement and perspectives really are in governing AI to prevent the risks, reap the benefits as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you for those incredible insights. And if I could ask for a seamless swap now for the chairs of this afternoon's sessions, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll do the same again. I'll begin with Rebecca.
Thank you, Secretary, and it's a pleasure to be here. I want to assure you that we were the hardest working roundtable of the day. We went long, and I also need to apologize to the participants in the roundtable. I suppose that's appropriate as a Canadian. We had detailed policy proposals in almost every intervention that was made, and I will not be able to go into them, but there was just such substance. It was a super conversation, and I thank everyone who was around the table. And that really shows that we began with speaking to a number of leaders from government who made it very clear that artificial intelligence and attending to the guardrails as well as the capacities for innovation were core to their mandates, and there were a number of initiatives underway. I also thought it was very thoughtful that the leaders were clear about their need to build their own capacity within government, acknowledging that government can move more slowly sometimes than technology and innovation, but really thinking about how to build capacity. And this summit came up as a great example of ways in which leaders can come together, learn from each other. We talked about developing shared resources, shared ways to share what's working, what's not working, using different international conversations such as standards and the focus on interoperability, thinking about ways in which science can be done more openly, where research can be supported to really build capacity within government. That would be my first takeaway from the conversation. The second was really a clear consensus that regulation and innovation go hand in hand, that these are not two ends of the spectrum and binary choices, but rather in this moment, we need both. And that regulation can in fact drive innovation and vice versa. And we heard a number of different regulatory proposals, from product safety laws to liability approaches, through to things like sandboxing and building capacity moving forward. And then the third point we heard is that we really need to go beyond this notion of artificial intelligence as being one single entity that policymakers need to respond to. But in this moment, as we move from foundation through to frontier models, we need to go the next level down and dig deeper into capabilities, domains, approaches for release, and really understand what both the potential and the risks and the harms are across the life cycle of these different models and different approaches. And there were a number of proposals here. One of them was very specific around the way in which the safety institutes could be used to do some very specific work to inform regulation and action moving forward. And then finally, the last point, and I'm not just saying this because I believe in multi-stakeholderism, but there was a lot of belief in the importance of creating multi-stakeholder communities of action, and particularly because of the trust that governments have with regard to their citizens, and attending to education and skills development and literacy and closing that digital divide so that citizens can feel both protected and also enabled and inspired to innovate and to harness this potential for all. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Not to get competitive, Rebecca, but in 75 minutes, we solved international cooperation. It's all done right here. Madam Minister, it's an honor to be here and to have you all as colleagues and collaborators. We did not solve international cooperation, but we had a robust discussion and converged on three basic points. The first is that as we look to what the UN, the G20, the G7, the OECD, and all these different efforts can do on international collaboration, we have to start with having the right values. And there was quite a bit of agreement around the table about the importance of continued innovation, about digital solidarity and respect for different countries and their ways of operating, about being inclusive and trying to make sure that this is not just the province of the global north, as it were. and about being aware of the risks, not just the ongoing increase in risks as frontier models get better, but even what the existing models can do to some extent. And the Deputy Minister from Ukraine talked to us eloquently about that. Second, as we look to the future, we need not only a set of values and principles that the world converge around, but implementable, realistic action, much of it perhaps at the local level, the national level, but with some mechanism to trust but verify and understand what's happening at the national level. Third, we talked quite a bit about what can be done concretely in the next 12 months. And here there was a sense of the importance of a better shared understanding of the capabilities of frontier models. I would express also a hope, maybe riffing off some of the comments in our session, that effort, perhaps jump-started by a report on the state of the science that I know will be called for, can lead to an international panel on AI safety that a number of folks here have talked about. Second, a hope of developing a more coordinated approach to research. And here, the institute that is being rolled out today, tomorrow, might be really a cornerstone to a set of activities in different institutes around the world to pool research and knowledge, and to have that research be secure and safe and private where it needs to be, and a little bit more public where it can be. Last but certainly not least, the international collaborations and partnerships that can develop need to be focused on both the benefits, the well-being that AI can bring to billions of people around the world that are struggling to get access to healthcare, to better education, for example, to cleaner water, but at the same time be mindful of risks, and that ought to feed into a governance mechanism that we can all trust. And that leads me to the very last point, which is a real awareness that this summit is playing a key role, but it's existing amidst a G7 process, the Hiroshima process that our Japanese colleagues have helped to move forward, that has resulted in some helpful principles around the code of conduct, that the UN is participating in through its new high-level advisory board, that the OECD is taking part in. So all of us, as we are networked into these processes, can find ways over the next 12 months to bring that together as much as possible so that we fail and not, so we succeed and not fail. Much better that way. It's been a long day, what can I say? Thank you.
Well, those of you who are in my team, you know, don't you, really? That was our question. What should the scientific community do? And we decided, actually, the current models are really not the answer. So we had 4 discussions. The first one was that. We do really need a better set of models that are engineered with new architectures, engineered to be safe by design. We have a lot to learn from existing disciplines like safety engineering. One of the things we need to add in is non-removable off switches. We need to discuss open and closed release, but not too heatedly. And in those discussions, we have to admit that size really does matter. Also, it was pointed out to us in this discussion about this whole new engineered set of models that we did actually have to have a bit of epistemic modesty, and that uncertainty is rife in all of this. And then, of course, we came to the issue, but that's what we'd like to have. What are we going to do with the models that we've got at the moment? So we need to understand the existing risks and the number of actors involved in designing AI, evaluating throughout the life cycle, and deciding which values will be used in those evaluations is currently tiny. So we need to do something about broadening out that conversation. The burden of proof on safety clearly should remain with the vendors, and the scientific community's role is to design the tests to demonstrate safety for policymakers to impose. Whoa, interesting. We need a list of open research questions, which we will gather together. Those 75 minutes weren't enough for us to make that list. We're going to do that by correspondence in the next couple of days and find a way to publish a list of open research questions. And there are other things about the way we should do research together as well. So first of all, we would like to draw on many, many methodologies. Clearly, there are many technical questions here, but there are also many, many social questions as well. Sarah, our permanent secretary, pointed out that time is of the essence. We are going to need to do a lot of this very fast, and for that reason, we're going to need to decide which are the most important questions focus on those, find ways to get answers quickly, while somehow, clearly in tension, keeping some breadth of approach going. And I've left to last, because it's most important and it's come up again and again in other people's discussions, is this issue of inclusivity. Whose conversation is this? This needs to be everybody's conversation, because these issues affect all citizens. So we need to learn the lesson of the concentration of power that has ended up in the hands of a very small number of people because of the way the internet evolved. And if we can, we need to avoid that happening again. We also need an inclusivity that recognises big geographical differences at the moment, not only in who gets to speak, who gets to research, and who benefits. And we need to include, we need linguistic inclusion, so that this is not just a technology for a small number of languages. And again, to repeat things that have already been said, we need to find ways to hear from the public. Not just consult with the public, but actually hear what they have to say to us, because there are many voices that need to be heard in response to these questions that we've been asking today. Those voices are, it's us who need to learn how to hear those queries. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you very much to our afternoon panel chairs, who were quite competitive, I must say. Obviously, none of them were in our session, which was naturally the best. But in the session that I chaired, which was about responsible capability scaling, there was a recognition of the role it plays, but also that that is just the baseline. And it doesn't, of course, replace the need for government to set standards. And there was a debate about how much we should aim to scale. And a key point was also made in regards to the importance of secure by design in relation to cyber security. And lastly, there was a consensus on the need for trusted external organisations to run the benchmarks that determine risk. And many of the contributors referenced the UK and the US announcements of institutes. So I would like to thank our afternoon chairs. Now, I was told that there were some really insightful, interesting comments that were made across the sessions today, and we tried to take just a few of them to give people another insight into what went on. Now, these people that have been selected have 2 minutes. I'm also told we might actually cut the mic if people get a bit carried away. So we're going to be a bit disciplined here, otherwise we'll be here till 10 o'clock. So if I just call out the names, and there is a roving mic. First of all, we have Francine.
Thank you. Hopefully wave if I'm about to get my mic cut. So quite a day. It's great that we've had these meetings today. They've put so much energy into something that's really important, and I'd really like to see it evolve and deepen a lot. And the conversation today reinforced for me that the summit's not basically about technology or regulation. It's basically about people. It's about the people who make technology, regulate technology, and the people whose lives are affected by the technologies. So we need to understand how technology impacts people's lives. And to Angela's point in the scientific community readout, we need to include lost my place. We need to include the people whose lives are affected by this, and we need to have real understanding of the social values, the risks and the harms, so it's baked into development and deployment of tech, and we're not doing that yet. Yet, I say. It's not we can't, we're not doing it yet. So everyone in this room wants to see the benefits of AI tech realised, and the Bletchley Declaration this morning, I think, articulates that really well. But we've still got two paths. So one where people are anxious and mistrustful about technology and potentially suffer harms, and another where they're safe enough to have it in their lives. And we can't get to that second path without regulation backed by law, informed by evidence of on-the-ground tools and mechanisms, which we've been talking about today. So it's great to see so much energy today being directed towards that and towards thinking about risks and mitigations. But if we can't have the incentives for everyone to stick to the mitigations, it doesn't help. So we can look to domains where we've had good mitigations and where we've done good regulation already. So we've got confidence in things like, we'll fly in planes without worrying they'll fall out of the sky or anything terrible will happen. We'll take medicines and feel confident about that. We've got no substitute for regulation to use these impactful but also sometimes risky technologies well. So getting really concrete. Here in the UK, the government's got a couple of live opportunities to address this in the King's Speech or the Data Protection Bill, which I really hope are taken up. I'm really encouraged also by the tone of today to think that other nations are also going to take up similar opportunities to move fairly quickly on all of this. And in parallel, we as members of civil society, and I don't speak just for Ada Lovelace Institute here, but for the wider civil society group here, will continue to build evidence for how we'll make these technologies work for people and society. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call upon Deb next, please?
Hi, hello. I'm Deb Raji. I'm a fellow at Mozilla. I'm also a researcher at UC Berkeley. I think my takeaway from the day is that every country has their own AI strategy. Every corporation has their high-level AI principles. And some of these have been floating around for years. And it's time, it seems like now is the right time to translate some of that high-level thinking and the consolidation around high-level principles into practical, detailed, concrete plans, translate it into an articulation of what best practices look like, what actual technical standards look like, articulate our expectations for these technologies, especially across high-stakes domains, and get to the point where we can actually make some practical progress on holding various companies and other stakeholders accountable for the ways in which they develop, design, and deploy AI systems. I think something else that came up across various conversations was the need for role models in this translation work from sort of high-level thinking about this problem to the more practical domain that we're entering. So thinking about, there was across various conversations, there's been repeated mention of the aerospace industry as a role model, the automobile industry. There was a great analogy that was brought forward by a professor in Singapore about in the automobile industry, there's manufacturing standards around the vehicle, but there's also licenses for the drivers. There's also infrastructural design for the roads and the safety of the environment in which these systems are deployed. These are incredible models that we can learn from in our design of these systems and how we regulate these systems. Also mentioning role models, there was a lot of discussion about learning from each other. Various national ministers discussing specific case studies with each other. There was a discussion of a shared repository of case studies and shared practices and strategies that could be, or a recurring event such as this one, to discuss sort of practical progress on some of these more localized interventions when it comes to enforcement. Again, speaking to that international coordination, there was a lot of discussion as well about the need for standards and guidance at that international level also being a more concrete effort. And then finally, I think something I've also learned from the conversations today and I've reflected on today is that if AI doesn't work for everyone, it doesn't work at all. There are various communities, countries that are not part of that national conversation. Various folks mentioned countries in Africa and the global south, where these large language models are not working in their local languages and are not necessarily bringing them any concrete benefits or making failures that have not been adequately tested in their context. Also thinking about individuals that are from marginalized or underrepresented groups, where they're misrepresented or underrepresented in the data and so are not experiencing any of the benefits of the deployment of this technology, and in fact are being put at risk by the widespread deployment of this technology without thinking about testing for their particular specific context and use case and population. And so I'm excited to sort of see where these things go moving forward and how we're going to sort of build a practical, pragmatic path that is inclusive and effective in bringing those benefits to a wider population without putting anyone at further risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And next up, we have Brian.
Hi, everyone. This is Brian from Concordia AI. We are an AI safety organization based in Beijing. What an incredible day we have had here at the Plenary Park. So I would just like to commend the UK for making this happen. And I would like to share 3 key messages. One is the world clearly has a shared interest in ensuring global AI safety. The risk from frontier AI that we discussed in the morning, from catastrophic misuse to unexpected dangerous capabilities to the potential loss of human control, they do not respect national borders. And we have a collective responsibility to protect the present as well as future generations to come. The second, we have much to gain when we work together as a global community. When we encourage international collaboration between researchers around the world, we will have better AI safety solutions. As countries all develop governance frameworks for AI, we have this golden window of opportunity to exchange lessons and learn from each other. And this is also the right timing to really work towards international institutions to govern the risk as well as the benefits from further advances in AI. Third, we must continue to include and empower the voices from the global south. As AI capabilities proliferate over time, the success of global AI governance regime would ultimately depend on the buy-in from as many countries in the world as possible. And as advanced AI systems could impact all of humanity, giving everyone a voice on how this should go is also morally the right thing to do. So in closing, let us carry forward the spirit of openness and cooperation from our time together at the Plenary Park. This is only the beginning, and let's get to work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Martin?
Thank you, Secretary of State. As you said, this is the start of a global conversation about the risks of AI, which is timely and urgent. And I look forward to further conversations now we've learned in South Korea and in France next year. We have a window of opportunity that's open for AI safety and governance, but that window will close. So for me, the key question for all of us is, what will we regret not having done 10 years from now? First, I think we have to be clear, and I think this was probably present in all the groups, about what we are not talking about. I think there's still a tension as to whether we're talking about AI risks today or AI risks in the future and how they're linked. And I don't think we'll solve it in this room, but we will solve it by building the community of actors working on these issues and encouraging them to work together. Second, I think we need to be clear that AI is about values. It's political and it reflects the values, the mindset, the ways of looking at the world of its creators and of the data sets it is built upon. Abiba Bihani did a fantastic presentation on this at the AI Society Forum yesterday, which I encourage everyone to see. We need to bend AI to our vision, to our values. Third, let's use this global conversation to see where we have different perspectives and work through them together. For example, open source. Is it friend or foe? Friends for risk today, foe for risk tomorrow? Hard law or voluntary commitments? I think we need to be quite wary of blunt dichotomies here and again, work through them together. So to finish, overall, I think it's really critical to anchor our conversations in the values that we share. And as I hear them, accountability is a really key one. For AI to be successful, it has to be accountable. It cannot be the preserve or the responsibility of technology companies alone. And here I think there's a vital role for civil society to play, for funders. For example, we were talking about making the market for algorithmic auditing. Second, responsibility, that we, companies, governments, and civil society all have a joint responsibility to ensure these systems don't fall into the wrong hands. And thirdly, many people have spoken about this in different ways. Participation, engagement, openness, bringing our citizens with us and work with them, our communities being engaged. Open source AI infrastructure is a key example of this, an incredible infrastructure, and we were talking earlier today, powered by volunteers around the world, and that drives everything from electric car to banking. To mitigate current and future harms from AI systems, I think we need to embrace and reflect how openness and transparency can help. And as a recent letter put it, when it comes to AI safety and security, we need to think about openness as an antidote, not a poison. And finally, inclusivity. Many of you have said it. It's not just about one institution, it's about an ecosystem of activity. Tino Cuellar was mentioning this earlier. It's not a conversation for the few, but for the many. So I look forward to the outcomes of the summit and to the conversation continuing in South Korea and in France. Thank you.
Now we have Hiroaki.
Hi, this is Hiroaki Tano, City of Sony Group Corporations. Well, this has been a great day. So I would like to thank UK government and the organizer for making this event possible. I think we have like a lot of discussion about the regulatory framework and the guidelines. I think those are very important. At the same time, we should face the reality those regulations might breach against the person or organization with the malicious intentions. So we have to have another countermeasure. I think one of the morning sessions, Yang actually raised the issue that we need the powerful AI to be able to have the countermeasure, and I echo that. I think we need to have like a very powerful AI research to be able to counter the possible maluse of the AI and then also the failure as well. Now, as probably we should take a little bit like more in the future. I think we're talking about the cybersecurity and disinformation, biotechnology, the most of the sessions as one of the risk side as well. But if you look at the 10 years, 20 years into the future, we'll see. We're going to have like an AI scientist, for example, as one of the highly significant, high impact applications. The AI will make a discovery, scientific discovery, highly autonomously, and that will benefit our civilization a lot. At the same time, because it's a powerfulness, I think we have like a new challenge in how to manage that. I think we probably down the road in the future session, we might actually want to talk about like some of the high impact AI development 10, 20 years into the horizons. Now, second thing is as we improve the AI and penetrate into the social system, current AI really depends on the data, and the data is heavily unbiased. Biased actually. So like it really depends on the English contents on the specific regions in the world. So the someone who's in Africa or part of the Asia in a serious disadvantage because the data is not there in the AI system. They can be accessing AI, but they don't get the decent reactions. They don't get the full benefit of AI. I think this is a great forum to be able to correct that, or probably the initiative to have like a well-balanced data set, respecting culture and diversity, and so that no one left behind. And the third and finally, probably not least, where the data come from? Data come from the creators. Someone who take a photo, someone compose the music, someone write. So I think like it's very important for us to be protecting the IP and then even help them to be even more creative, so that the richness and diversity and the quality of data can be maintained into the future. So I think like in the future session, it would be good to have like a more inclusive on the creators, data providers, and someone who generate those contents, so that our AI can be harmonized and get more powerful and sustainable into the future. Well, I think those are the something we should look into hopefully into the future. And this has been a really great session, and I hope like this tradition continues in Korea and France. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally in this session, Jess.
Thank you. Nice and some pressure to have the last word. I think one thing that's been really clear to me today is that while many of us may disagree on many things, one thing that there's a fair amount of agreement around is that we do need more oversight and accountability of how AI is being developed, particularly at the frontier. And I think today has done a really good job of both showcasing some of the progress that's been made on this in the last year, while also, I think, helping to highlight some of the areas that need a lot more work. So I'll just mention a few areas that struck me today. The first is it's been really great to see companies publishing safety policies in a bunch more detail than we've seen before on request of governments. I think that external scrutiny and competition between companies can go a long way in kind of creating a race to the top rather than a race to the bottom. And I think there's a lot more that especially sort of civil society and academia can do to create some of the scrutiny and pressure that's needed to really kind of improve what happens there. And by the next summit, it would be really great to see a lot of those policies developed further and in more detail with some of that kind of back and forth scrutiny and some of that competition, egging companies on to beat each other on this. But ultimately, as was clear in the responsible scaling session we had earlier, we do really need a lot of this to start happening and being driven more outside of companies, not to have companies setting their own rule books, but to have external actors starting to both be able to kind of evaluate systems and be able to set the standards. I think the 2 safety institutes we've now got announced are really exciting in this regard. What I'm most excited about there is building the expertise and the capacity to do a lot of this scrutiny outside of government. But there's obviously a really long way to go there and really building up that capacity and and really bringing in the diversity of expertise we need to ensure that we can assess risks across all of the themes that were discussed this morning. I think what would be really great by the next summit is if sort of those safety institutes and perhaps other third parties were in a place where they could start leading the conversation on what responsible and safe behaviour looks like a little more than we've seen today. So we're not just asking the companies to develop policies, but there's more kind of questions coming to them from government and third sector. And third, I think ultimately all of this needs to be underpinned by regulation. That was pretty clear in a lot of our discussion sessions too. There is a lot of uncertainty about and a lot of challenging questions about regulation. Open source is one. But I think there are some things that we're relatively clear on, and most people can agree on, about the need for transparency and greater oversight that could be regulated and mandated now. I think the US executive order goes a long way to sort of make a start on that, and it would be really great to see other countries, follow. And by the next summit, it would be really great to see more detailed regulatory proposals being discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those thought-provoking reflections. Now, to close off the first day of the summit, our last full section is on AI for good, one of the key reasons why we're all here and why we are trying to introduce mitigations. And I have the great pleasure of introducing to the stage Minister Husic from Australia, Mr. Ingabire from Rwanda, and Demis, as Iba. Come on, please, to the stage. Thank you very much. Hopefully Demis will forgive me for cocking up his last name, but it's been a very long day and a very long few weeks for all of us in the build-up to this summit. But this is going to be somewhat of a bit of an organic session where I ask a few questions and we talk about AI for good. I think it will be quite difficult probably for our panellists to identify specific areas because there is so much good that can come from AI. But when I'm asked this question, I'm particularly passionate about education. And I think the role that AI can play in education is phenomenal because when we think about it, across all of our societies, all of our countries, all of our cultures, education is the real foundation, the real springboard to opportunity. And when we look back on our lives and we think about our time in education, what strikes us is those individual teachers that had the time to invest in us, to inspire us, and to encourage us to go on and manage to be in this room today. And one of the key ways that AI can help is obviously by reducing some of that admin, that bureaucracy, and that paperwork, and freeing up teachers to have more of that face-to-face time. And here in the UK, we just announced a fund in order for us to move towards that. And we have a goal for every single teacher here in the UK to have an AI-powered assistant to enable them to be producing lesson plans that are targeted to each individual pupil and to be able to actually unlock some of the bureaucracy and give them more of that face-to-face time. But I'm really interested to hear what our panellists think is their top example of AI for good. Should we start with you, Minister?
For sure, thank you. And I think it's important for us to recognise what we are doing right now hasn't happened and doesn't happen often in terms of bringing people together to think around the application of technology in terms of international fora. So it is important for us to do what we're doing right now and to think about those use cases that are very positive. I can think in the Australian example is a terrific young woman, an Australian who I, of all places, met in Boston, who was developing a robot using AI in a paediatric setting to help young kids with their care during the time of some of their toughest health battles. And she's now gone on and built a company 12 strong in 6 months around that. I also think of a bionic ear manufacturer that is enhancing their software through the use of AI to deliver the gift of sound to people that have been denied it and being able to use that in that way. Or the AI-powered drones that are delivering life-saving medicines to remote communities in the Pacific. All in our country are being done by Australian firms that are using technology but wanting to get that balance right. And that's what we're trying to think about. What we're trying to think about is those case studies where AI has had that effect, and to also think, well, if this goes wrong, where is the balance? And it is a bit of a vexed debate, just picking up on your thing around education finally. AI holds the promise to deliver personalised education outcomes tailored to people individually, right? But we're also thinking about generative AI in the classroom, and we're having the similar debates that we'd had decades earlier, where we thought if we introduced calculators to classrooms, people wouldn't be able to perform maths anymore. Technology has found a way, people have used technology in a way to help themselves, but it is the role of us, and again, this is the importance of this type of grouping, it's up to us to think around those guardrails, the safer operating environment.
Demis?
Yes, well, look, I think there's so many opportunities here, and there's so many challenges also facing, I think, society in the world. If you look at environment, climate, disease, and I think AI has the potential to impact and help as a tool to help our experts and scientists solve some of those biggest problems. So my personal passion is actually using AI for scientific discovery and to advance medicine. And I think we're beginning to see the examples of what that can do in a transformative way. We've worked on things like AlphaFold that can predict the 3D structure of proteins, and we hope that will accelerate into drug discovery, and maybe by an order of magnitude, instead of taking years to discover new drugs, maybe the order of months. I think we're also seeing being applied to material design, new types of energy like plasma containment and fusion, and even in fields like mathematics and theorem proving and important conjectures in mathematics. So I think it's kind of almost endless where I can see AI improving our knowledge, and maybe you can even think of the next 10 years as almost a new renaissance, a new golden era of scientific discovery with these very powerful tools helping our top scientists make progress. And then, of course, talking about education, I agree with the Minister, there's incredible potential for personalised education. I'm really happy to hear the announcement of the fund. I think it's an incredible opportunity there for AI to improve education. And also, commercially, I think there's enormous opportunities for the next generation to start new businesses and startups that apply AI to improve all sorts of parts of our lives for billions of people around the world with new AI-powered products and services. And I think there, we need to make sure there's access to all around the world to the new students to gain the technology skills they need to utilize AI to the fullest extent. And we've tried to do our bit in that. We're founding sponsors of the Deep Indaba meeting, which has become the preeminent machine learning conference in Africa. And we sponsor hundreds of students at master's levels from underrepresented backgrounds to get master's degrees in AI. And I think they can then go on to take advantage of this and improve their own lives and others around in their communities.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Minister?
Yep, so I also agree. I think when you look at healthcare and education, there's massive opportunities. What we've done for Rwanda when we launched our national AI policy was to back it with an economic impact assessment on where do we see the biggest potential of deploying AI solutions. And so what we saw were about 4 areas that ranked high. Agriculture was one of them. That was also because predominantly we are an agriculture-based economy. And so if we're trying to think about how to deploy AI solutions in a manner that is inclusive and creates value for everyone within the country, agriculture ranked highest. The second one was public services, and this was really looking at how do you use AI solutions to improve public service delivery, but also looking at things like better tax revenue collection, better healthcare insurance claims management. When it came to public transportation, looking at how do you deploy AI models to support bus scheduling and ensuring that you have a more reliable and efficient public transport system. But the one that I want to emphasize most is around healthcare. And so what we've been doing, in many ways, of course, we look at the opportunities around early disease detection, drug discovery and all these benefits. But what we've done for Rwanda, because we have community health workers being the very front-facing health workers for the people and supporting with, providing health services to people within different communities, particularly in rural areas, what we've done is to create AI models where we're leveraging large language models that provide decision support solutions to the community health workers. Case in point is like malaria, and so even just looking at how do you help with malaria detection, a combination of both clinical data and environmental data to support with monitoring and detection of the malaria outbreak. Why is this very important for us? Beyond the fact that we've already been able to estimate about $589 million potential, which is equivalent to 6% of our GDP, it's also the fact that as Rwanda, we have positioned ourselves as a proof of concept hub for some of these emerging technologies. And so if we're able to use AI to solve for a problem in healthcare, then it's much more easier to replicate a similar solution in different parts of the continent because the challenges we face are almost similar in nature. And so this is where we see the most potential, and of course not neglecting environment monitoring and really figuring out how we do all of that. I wanted to conclude with the fact that when you look at our national AI policy, beyond the building blocks of data, strategy, the required compute infrastructure that is needed, the talent and capabilities required, what we've done is in order to manage risk, because this whole day we'll be talking about risk, we want government to be at the forefront of deploying these AI solutions, because then we can understand better the risks that come with deploying these solutions, and then we're in a better position to put in place the right guardrails and regulations before we take a backseat to only do regulation and the private sector deploys solutions. And so we are, over the next 5 years, we're going to be, as a government, looking at what are the different opportunities within the different industries where we can deploy AI solutions and use that as a way to inform the policies and regulations and standards that we put in place, working with the private sector.
Thank you. And when it comes to making sure that we can truly seize the opportunities in relation to AI for good, that doesn't always mean domestically, of course, because obviously AI has the potential to help us solve global challenges like climate change. And I was interested to know your reflections, each of you, on how can we work better globally to truly seize the opportunities, which needs to be at the heart of this summit and this discussion, not only how we can grip the risks.
Again, I think what we've seen here today is countries large and small recognising in a way that has not happened previously that we do need to be able to work together and find common pathways, realising it's effectively harmonise where we can and act locally where we have to, but given the way in which, as you indicated a few moments ago, the reach of the technology, the way that it's being developed in different parts of the world, applied elsewhere, these type of gatherings, as well as what will happen in Korea and in France, and keeping that momentum going, and I pick up, I think, on Martin's point of not losing the moment as well, and keeping the momentum going will be very important. And I think we're all driven, finally, by, as much as we're talking about risk, is through all this, being able to really get the maximum benefit for differing communities with differing challenges, but who want to do well out of the application of the technology.
Yeah, thank you. Demis?
Yeah, well, I think AI is such a global technology, and it's going to affect everyone in the world. And it's amazing to see the international group gathered here. And I think it's going to need, ideally, global standards that we can all kind of converge on for the benefit of everyone. So I think that's important, and perhaps this is one of the first steps towards that. And I look forward to that continuing in the subsequent summits. Just also going back to the scientific point, I think there's a lot of potential between collaboration between companies and academia in terms of applying AI to domains, specialized domains, whether that's biology or chemistry or climate, where there are experts in that domain. maybe, and mostly they're usually in academia, and then going to them to understand really what the questions are, the actual critical questions that are vital for that subject, and then how to map AI onto that. And that's what we've been very successful doing actually at DeepMind, is to collaborate with those domain experts in a really multidisciplinary way. And that's the only way that you can actually apply AI in the right way. Because often, AI can seem this sort of magical tool, but in fact, you need to use it in the right way, and it's only suitable for certain things. And you really need to understand that other domain, and you only get that through collaboration.
Very true. Thank you. Yes.
So I believe in addition to the standards and regulations that I would make 3 points. One is around creating the kind of partnerships that will democratize access to compute infrastructure across the board. I think we know that computing infrastructure is really concentrated in certain parts of the world. And so if we're talking about inclusion, how do we ensure that we are democratizing access to such capacity and capabilities? The second one is building partnerships that allow for creating the right talent across the board. Because with talent comes the need to build solutions that are contextualized to certain challenges. The absence of ensuring that we have talent across the board will mean that many developing countries will remain consumers for a long time, if not playing catch-up for a very long time. So how building the right capabilities, building the right talent that will fuel these AI-enabled innovations is very critical. And the last one is around AI research. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all model of how we deploy AI. It's always going to be specific to everyone's context, what kind of challenges you're trying to solve for, whether or not AI is the best use case for how you want to solve those challenges. And so understanding the intersection between research and product development and how we enable that to drive impactful, responsible deployment of AI is going to be critical, and that should be at the heart of all these global partnerships that we are engaging in.
Thank you. Everybody give a round of applause for our panel. Thank you. Thank you. I think it was really important to share a range of different areas that AI can make a transformational difference. Now, before we close day one, we're nearly there, guys. We're nearly there. We must reflect that we have spoken about the importance of ensuring that we build on the conversations that have taken place today and create that long-lasting legacy for the future summits of AI. This is a historical gathering. Many people have said that throughout the day. And building on that Bletchley Declaration is only really the beginning of the conversation. So with that in mind, in the host next year's AI Summit, we have, of course, the Republic of Korea and then also France. And I would like to once again thank them for taking on that baton. Thank you. So I would like to thank Minister Lee Jong-ho and Minister Barrot for their willingness to take on the discussions, and I will give them some top tips after this. But I would like to welcome Minister Lee Jong-ho to the stage to say a few short words. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to have this opportunity to close the session. The emergence of generative AI has electrified the whole world, and now countries around the world are recognizing that this wondrous new technology can bring both benefits and risks at the same time. Due to the concerns that fast-paced AI race can result in potential risks proportional to AI's benefits, some even called for a pause on advanced AI development for 6 months. As you can see, technology is a double-edged sword that can enhance our lives, but at the same time put us in a great danger. That is why the safe use of technology is highly important. In particular, a technology like AI is known for its immediate and connected nature. So our approach to promoting the safe use of AI should be handled on a global level. not by a certain country or a company. The international community should also work together to narrow the digital gap and increase digital literacy so that the benefits of AI leave no one behind. In this regard, at the Digital Vision Forum held in Paris in June, President Yoon Suk-yeol suggested creating an international organization under the UN for discussing digital norms for emerging technologies, including AI. In September, Korea published a digital bill of rights which proposes freedom, fairness, safety, innovation, and solidarity as 5 principles that can guide the direction of AI governance in the age of deepening digitalization. I believe today's summit held in Bletchley Park served as a good opportunity to reflect these suggestions by Korea and concretize them. The Republic of Korea and the United Kingdom have agreed to co-host the next AI Safety Summit 6 months later in order to make meaningful contributions to advancing global discussions on the safe use of AI. I hope that the next summit will provide a venue for evaluating the AI safety testing system discussed today and identifying common rules that will be supported by both government and major private companies. Today, we are gathered here to witness a historic moment where we are exploring how to work together and how to promote AI safety. Before I finish, I would like to thank the UK government once again for hosting the AI Safety Summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You can pick.
Right,
no, thank you. And today truly has been a historic summit. I believe we have begun building a lasting international consensus on the safe development of artificial intelligence. And we shouldn't underestimate the significance of the work that we've done over the last few weeks getting here, but also in the last few hours too. And I am once again grateful to all of the chairs of today's session and for sharing their insights. What we have done today is assembled for the first time a truly inspirational cohort of policymakers, of developers, and civil society representatives focused exclusively on the frontier. Through the Bletchley Declaration, we have laid the foundations for addressing one of the greatest challenges of our generation, the emerging risks of frontier AI. And as we stand here or sit here today, we should once again consider that science fiction is quickly becoming science fact. And when it comes to the frontier, AI is increasingly unconstrained by our borders. It is not just that an international approach to this issue is preferable, it is absolutely essential. And as I said this morning, we are all in agreement that we need to move away from the speculation and the hypotheticals and move towards the scientific and the empirical. And I think that we would all agree that today we've had many productive conversations that have begun to do just this. Leaders and thinkers from across the spectrum of cultures and ideals have been able to contribute and help shape the future. Yet, despite our varying perspectives, we have managed to reach a level of agreement that would not have been realized without convening today. As the eyes of the world are truly upon us, we can send them a message that we stand ready. We stand ready to harness one of the most important technologies in human history. The ink is still wet on this new and important chapter in the story of how safe AI can become a transformational force for good across the world. And many of us have indeed been surprised by the speed at which AI has been advancing. However, our collective efforts today have shown that humanity can move even faster, heading towards advanced mitigations and processes like responsible capability scaling. But we cannot take this for granted. The sense of urgency that has brought us here together will naturally begin to dissipate when we return to our respective countries and organisations. But the sense of cohesion and unity that we have developed here at Bletchley must remain at the forefront of our minds. And we must also recognise that governments do not have all the answers. Quite simply, none of us can do this alone. Because I truly believe that we are at a crossroads in human history, and to turn the wrong way would be a monumental missed opportunity for mankind. We will each have to make a concerted effort to maintain momentum and ensure the outcomes of this summit drive forward new action. As a new science and new research becomes available to help us guide us in the right direction, we must remain agile and alert. And also, we must begin to consider the importance of working together at every step. And by the time that we reconvene at our checkpoint in 6 months' time, hosted by the Republic of Korea, and the next summit in a year's time at France, we will have those new models, many, many times more powerful than we have today. But because of the work that we have undertaken here at Bletchley, these unprecedented advances will be mirrored by an unprecedented mobilisation on safety. Our contribution starts with the UK AI Safety Institute, driving forward research and improving our understanding of the risks before they emerge. The Bletchley Declaration will, for the first time, hold us equally accountable and solidify that united stance. And the many international agreements and accords that have come before this summit will be strengthened by that unity. Where we entered this summit with diverse and conflicting scientific views, we should aim to enter the next summit with progress towards a scientific consensus on the risks we face, grounded in empirical evidence. This is perhaps the greatest advance we will ever see in human history. And we are not just witnesses to it, but we are the authors of it. This confers immense responsibility to the rest of humanity and to future generations to get this right. And so, our work isn't done today. It is just getting started. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. The reception will be starting shortly in the Clark Pavilion. If you have any belongings in the Hub cloakroom, please remember to collect these prior to the